Welcome to Business Minds. I'm Cindy Bird, your host. I'm a business owner myself, an educator, and a thinking partner with a passion for helping individuals and businesses thrive. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in today. Last week I kicked off the August theme a little early. It was just right at the end of July. And the August theme for Business Minds is all about learning and development because traditionally August is back to school time. We're in that mode with our kids, if you're a parent or a grandparent taking charge of those kids for back to school time. But it's time to really think about your own learning and professional development too. Last week, I talked about how ongoing learning can enhance your business brand, your personal brand, and your brand as an employer. That reputation you have as a great place to work. And in a tight labor market, that's a really interesting one, or an important one, I should say, to have to focus on. And one of the elements I mentioned was a part of your employer brand was how that ongoing learning can help your leaders and managers in your organization or your business to really bring their best selves to the workplace and to have confidence in their ability to create an environment that's inviting and engaging for employees, a positive place where people want to be, including them. So I want to delve into that aspect a little bit further today. As I thought about that topic, I thought about an article that I actually wrote a little over 5 years ago that was ended up being the lead article in Inner Business Issues magazine. I was really honored to have it chosen to be the feature article because it's something that I believe in so strongly. The article is called What Managers Can Learn from Undercover Boss. It was published in April of 2013. And the lessons I share in that article, though, are still very relevant to today's workplace, and they're timeless, in my opinion. I talked at the beginning of the article about the fact that the numbers in 2011, the latest Gallup poll numbers about employee engagement, were pretty dismal, and this is 2018, and they're not really any better. So this is a topic that is still very important for ongoing learning, especially of leaders and managers. So I started watching Undercover Boss pretty much as soon as it premiered in February of 2010 because I was a business professor at Robert Morris University. Of course, I had my business Image Potential where I was out in businesses helping with that ongoing learning and development of leaders and managers. And I saw it as an interesting and engaging way to take those episodes and use them in the classroom and also use them in my corporate teaching and business training and development programs too. But I really saw what was happening in those episodes as something that the students could use to apply their learning. And that's my job as an educator, is to help my students, whether they're in the classroom or whether they're in the boardroom, so to speak, make those learning applications apparent. So not just a concept or here's 6 things you could do, but how do I take those and apply them? Granted, Undercover Boss, Emmy Award-winning TV series, features CEOs typically, and I thought, well, maybe people would look at that too and say, well, I don't see myself, I'm not a CEO of a company. But maybe you're the owner of a small business. Maybe you run a nonprofit organization. I see what happens in an Undercover Boss episode as very relevant to any type of business or organization, no matter what size you are, whether you are the sole leader and manager in that business or whether you have thousands of employees. It really doesn't matter. I saw a pattern emerge as I watched episodes along the way, and the more I watched, the more that pattern really became solidified in my mind. I saw a pattern of 6 things that the CEOs did consistently throughout each episode. And they ended up, in my mind, being 6 specific strategies that can help with employee engagement. And what I write about, though, further in the article is there were some really powerful underlying lessons that the CEOs took away from having put these 6 strategies into place. And that's really powerful. That's a part that I want to highlight today as well. I think it was really one episode in particular that was my catalyst for me saying, I'm going to write about this, and I'm going to turn it into a workshop that I can use to teach leaders and managers as well. And it was the episode featuring Toby Boast, the CEO of a company called O'Neill Clothing USA, kind of a lifestyle brand of clothing. And he encountered a young man. Of course, the CEO's undercover, so the young man has no idea he's encountering the CEO. But this young man says to him, I'm just straight up lazy. I know how to grow some weed, though, if you're interested. And yeah, I've been around for a while, and that reminded me of a movie in the 1980s, 1982 to be exact, a coming-of-age movie. A lot of those are very popular. This was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Maybe those of you who are old enough to remember that movie remember Spicoli, the surfer dude, and it just reminded me of him. And I start making these connections. I realized that one of my favorite classic management books, The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, was also published in 1982. And one of Blanchard's concepts in that book was it's important to catch people doing something right. And I realized that's the attraction, I think, of Undercover Boss is these CEOs actually end up catching people doing something right along the way. Well, maybe not the surfer dude, pothead, but we'll hear more of his story. But if the appeal, as I pointed out in my article, if the appeal was just catching people doing something wrong, people would gravitate towards a show that you might remember, doesn't air anymore, called The Apprentice, where it was all about firing people. But there are those 6 strategies that I saw, and they really stood out for me in that episode about O'Neill Clothing. And then I saw them again in episodes about Oriental Trading Company and about KOA Campgrounds and Moe's Southwest Grill. So those are some of the episodes that I highlighted in the article. So let me go ahead and preface this first of all. When I mentioned that these concepts, these strategies are timeless learning and they're very relevant still, if you don't think that's true, let me read you a couple of stories that were submitted, or a couple of workplace situations that were submitted to Marie McIntyre. She's an office coach who writes a column in the newspaper. So someone wrote in and said, the managers in our department are autocratic bullies who treat employees like first graders. If they find us talking to a coworker, they immediately order us to get back to our own cubicle, even if we're discussing a work project. They actually covered all the windows to keep us from looking out. That's hard to imagine that's something like that's happening in the workplace, but it is. Here's another one. In the dental practice where I work, we have a new office manager who is rapidly demoralizing her staff. She is a chronic gossip who constantly belittles employees behind their backs. She will have a negative conversation with one person about another, then turn around and tell the first one what the second one said. As a dental hygienist, I am not directly involved with the administrative staff. However, they often share the comments that the office manager makes about their coworkers. In my 20 years here, I've never seen a manager like that. And the dentist seems to have no clue what's happening. Well, one of the great things about those CEOs going undercover is they gain a lot of clues. They move from being clueless about what's happening on the front lines with employees to gaining a lot more perspective. If you think that those are just maybe made-up stories that somebody's submitting to a column in the newspaper, I hear from people all the time in my line of work. And just recently, here are some examples. I know of someone who works in the local Peoria area who was told not to come to meetings anymore because the ideas and suggestions she was making were intimidating. Now, I don't know how she was delivering these, but what is she going to do moving forward? She's not going to give up her ideas and suggestions anymore. Had another client, a new client, tell me that she was told one time by a manager, you spend too much time in your kids' activities. Again, those are things that are hard to imagine that managers actually say and do, but it's a reality. So all the more reason why these 6 strategies are really key. So let me review those with you. The first one is experience firsthand what employees deal with on the job. We see this a lot in Undercover Boss because the CEOs are actually getting on the front lines. They're manning the drive-through. They're making the pizzas. They're dealing with customers. They're putting the clothes out for retail and so on. But in the Oriental Trading Company episode a while back, the CEO was working with a gentleman who was loading semis. That was his job all of the time. And he got an earful from that individual about how hot it was and inside of those trucks. And it was constant nonstop work, and that the company had cut sports drinks and water for the employees because they were trying to cut costs overall. He learned from a warehouse employee that it's just hot in here altogether. They don't provide water, it's a budget thing. She said to him, why don't those bigwigs come in here and see what it's like instead? Company picnics are nice, but how about taking care of us on the job instead? The CEO of O'Neill Clothing, Toby Boast, went to assist with screen printing of t-shirts that are sold in his stores. And he learned that Jorge, the employee there, had no complete design specifications in order to be able to do the screen printing. So he'd had to finagle something on his own in order to be able to do it. Well, the CEO tried his hand at it, and he learned just how hard it is to have to do that. And many of the shirts that he made were coming out with crooked printing. But here, what's the underlying lesson? The underlying lesson, when you learn that your employees don't have the resources they need, or they have outdated equipment, they don't have support systems in place, whether that's communication or computer systems, the underlying lesson is the focus should be on fixing problems, not on fixing people. The CEO of Oriental Trading Company put it this way: it's easy to criticize from afar or think everything is okay. You have to experience things firsthand to really be aware. Really important. Second strategy that I saw employed throughout the episodes is spend time getting to know employees. Saw this a lot in all of the episodes. Along with learning how to do the jobs that the CEOs encounter when they're undercover, they're learning a lot about their employees. You know, it's really important for leaders and managers and businesses and organizations in general to realize we bring our whole self to life. We bring our whole self to the workplace. There used to be an old suggestion, and maybe some companies still live by it: you check your emotions and you check your personal problems at the door. You don't bring them across that threshold. And that's challenging, and it's not appropriate, in my opinion, to expect employees to do that. Here are some things that the CEOs learned. You know, Toby Boast learned about the surfer dude that he came from a broken family. He did not have fatherly guidance and support. That's no excuse for his behavior at work that was inappropriate, no excuse for pushing pot onto a fellow employee, but it gave Boast a lot of insight and understanding about this particular employee, and it made him think twice before he automatically fired him. Boast also learned that there were extenuating circumstances for his employees. The gentleman who he practiced screen printing t-shirts with had a child who had a very rare disease that was causing both financial and emotional hardship to the family. Another employee of O'Neill Clothing, Michael, His family had been homeless. They'd been robbed at gunpoint. His mom was out of work. He was supporting his mom and his two sisters with his salary alone. He learned another young lady who was employed at one of his stores was going through a divorce and trying to raise her young daughter on her own. So that's all well and good, and you need to know these things because that's impacting your employees' ability to focus and to do their job to the best of their ability. And while there might not be anything that you can directly do about it as a leader and manager, you at least need to be aware of it. On the other side of that, what the CEOs learn a lot is how wonderful their employees are. They learn about skills and abilities and motivators of their employees that they weren't aware of before. One of my favorites is an employee at Oriental Trading Company. She never met her production goals, but it was her choice because what mattered to her the most was making sure that the boxes were packed to the highest quality possible. Customer satisfaction was top on her list, and she put a lot of care into what she did. It could be really easy as that employee supervisor or the CEO to say, well, this person's lazy. That's why she's not meeting production goals. That wasn't it at all. So she was actually foregoing a full bonus because the other motivator was a stronger one for her. Strategy number 3, this is a great one. Invite employees to share feedback and ideas. Don't shoot the messenger because often what these CEOs hear isn't really pleasing to them. You heard about some of the comments from the employees at Oriental Trading Company. But when employees don't know they're talking to the boss, they are going to be more likely to open up and give you input and feedback. The challenge here is to, short of going undercover yourself, as I say in the article, you've got to make sure that you're creating an environment that's not a fearful one, where employees trust that they can come to you with their feedback and with their input. Maybe they're not even expecting that it be implemented, but they're certainly expecting that you at least listen to them. Those people working on the front lines really do have the greatest opportunity to see where things can be better and where things can be improved. And Ken Blanchard said that in the 1 Minute Manager. He said that it was really important for that opportunity. One of the employees at Oriental Trading Company suggested that the company create a product line focused on the Hispanic target market. And there was actually a way for an employee to submit a suggestion, but this particular individual had never heard anything back. There was crickets, no response to her suggestion. And she openly said to the CEO undercover, she said, I wasn't expecting my idea to get implemented, but I did expect that I would at least get some acknowledgement that I had submitted it. So that leads into strategy number 4. Show employees they're valued and appreciated. When you don't respond to them as a leader or a manager, that sends an inadvertent message. Maybe you never intended to send that message, but it still does send a message that they aren't valued. Their opinions and ideas aren't appreciated. You heard my story about someone I know who was told, don't come to meetings anymore. We don't want your ideas and your suggestions. That's absurd, in my opinion. When you catch people doing something right in the moment, that's a prime opportunity to show people they're valued and appreciated. And we do see some of that in the Undercover Boss episodes. Although, they're employees in training, they're undercover. They can't really praise these employees then. They praise them, of course, at the end during the reveal. But when you uncover or you see, you're more aware of an employee's unique abilities, how maybe they go above and beyond, or they're just really good at maybe showing other people the ropes, new people who come on board, whatever it might be. People who feel good about themselves are going to feel good about what they're doing and be more apt to be engaged and productive at work. That seems like a no-brainer, but I see so many businesses and organizations that forget that little thing. They forget that you can show value and appreciation through the little things sometimes. It's very famous, of course, in the Undercover Boss episodes that at the end, when the bosses reveal themselves, they pay for college tuition for employees. They send them on vacations with their families. They might just give them thousands of dollars to help with a financial hardship. They might give them a car, and the list goes on and on. But you don't need a big pot of money. That's the underlying lesson of this strategy is you don't need a big pot of money or a big pool of benefits to show people they're valued and appreciated. It can be a simple, thank you. I really appreciate all that you've done, or I really appreciated how you handled that customer, or you did a great job in resolving that conflict with Sally yesterday, or in speaking up at that meeting, in sharing your idea. Those little things can really be big things. Here's why, and I pointed this out in my article. Employees often perceive their value through their direct supervisor's lens. That's powerful, very powerful. That personalized recognition goes a long ways and means a lot to everybody. Strategy number 5 is a really interesting and important one too, and we see this in every episode. Nurture employee talents and dreams. When the undercover bosses realize that there's some untapped employee potential, they oftentimes are opened up to the awareness that they should be providing some further development opportunities for those employees that would help them live up to their full potential, maybe even help them live out some dreams and goals that they have. Here are a couple of examples. At Moe's Southwest Grill, the CEO witnessed a woman who was a very seasoned manager with the company, but she was exceeding company standards by consistently coming up with creative ideas for the dessert menu. So he sent her to company headquarters to meet with their executive chef about her ideas. He was also impressed with the marketing knowledge that another employee showed. Janet was a catering director with one of their locations, and he'd been wanting to expand the catering side of Moe's Southwest Grill, so he sent this employee to work with the director of catering to put together a worldwide symposium to teach everybody about the catering side of Moe's Southwest Grill. Even Boast, the CEO with the pot-pushing employee, he decided to mentor him and become that fatherly guidance that he had been lacking in his life. And that employee whose suggestion went unacknowledged, Taylor, the CEO of Oriental Trading Company, invited her to work directly with the product development team and pursue her ideas for the Hispanic market. But along the way, those are their work-related goals and dreams. Along the way, the undercover bosses also learn about personal dreams and goals. To go to college, maybe it's to stay with the company but advance, maybe to start their own business, maybe to spend more time with their family or other loved ones, or maybe just to make a better life for their family. And that was the case with a line worker at Moe's. He didn't have reliable transportation, and he struggled to find reliable daycare and pay for daycare for his daughter. He was a single dad. The CEO was impressed with this employee's dedication to the company and to his daughter, so he provided funding for a car, childcare, and for his daughter's future college education. Again, you're a small business owner or you run a nonprofit, you might not be able to do, chances are you're not going to be able to do things to that magnitude. But being aware of your employees' goals and dreams is important. I love what Matthew Kelly said. He's the author of The Dream Manager. He states that people stop dreaming when they get caught up in surviving. And I see a lot of people in the workplace who are just surviving, and that's not a good thing. So the underlying lesson from strategy number 5 is employee potential may show up in unexpected places, even in the form of an employee about to be dismissed. So what can you do if you don't have the ability to fulfill dreams in that more tangible way? Know what their dreams are. Point them in direction of resources that can help them. There are a lot of them out there. And if you need some more guidance, I suggest the book, The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. It's a great one. Strategy number 6 is reveal your true, authentic self. Of course, it's no secret, no pun intended, that at the end of each episode, the undercover bosses reveal their true identity. And the responses are priceless. They range from pleasant surprise to all the way, does this mean I'm going to get fired because maybe you were that, or it was that pot smoking employee who said something like that. But interestingly, what the employees don't express is anger or another negative emotion that they're upset that the CEOs were pulling one over on them by going undercover. Their authenticity of these CEOs is actually increased during these reveal sessions. And let's talk a little bit more about what that means. It's a humbling experience for these CEOs when they go undercover. Humbling in several ways. The 2 ways that I want to highlight. First of all, it's humbling because they realize they don't have the skills to do a lot of the things that their employees are doing. And they realize that they need to humble themselves before these employees and show them they're valued and appreciated, and to say, wow, we need your strengths. We need that. I don't have all the answers. I can't do it all myself. They also oftentimes see their own past circumstances in the employees that they encounter, especially when they learn more about their life stories. Oftentimes the CEOs are brought to tears, either because they remember their own situation or they're brought to tears by how the employees react when they're given the tuition and we're given resources and given promotions and given development opportunities. So the underlying lesson from strategy number 6, employees trust managers who are genuine and authentic. Authenticity means being humble, being willing to admit your mistakes, and yes, it's okay to cry. It's okay to show your emotions as a leader and manager. It shows that you're real. And it's not a sign of weakness. Being self-absorbed is the real weakness as a leader and manager, in my opinion. I think I closed that article by telling leaders and managers that they need a reality check, just like these CEOs. That oftentimes we're too focused on the bottom line and we're not remembering we've got human beings working for us. There is harmony between those things, and you've heard me say that before on the show. So I'm going to put a link out on the Business Minds Facebook page so that you can link to my article if you'd like to read the full one. And while you're there, I'd love you to comment on the show and to give me your suggestions as well as to what topics you'd like to see me cover on future shows. If you are interested in being a guest yourself or you have someone in mind you'd like to recommend to me, I'd love to hear from you there too. You can also reach me at businessminds@email.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
PeoriaLife.com